Take it away.
Hey, good morning. My name is Tim Jensen. I think I know most of you, not all of you, but most of you. I want to introduce our team today. So from Hancock Health, we got Rob Matt, who's here. From the Hub and Spoke group, Dave Decker, if you don't know David. And then from my office, Elena Schonkweiler. We're just excited to be here to show you a little bit more about it. Some of you, actually most of you, know a lot about this project, but maybe not all the details. So what we want to go through today is just a very brief slide presentation and of course get into questions for you so that you guys can answer or ask whatever you have of us. And we brought all of our partners, or many of our partners that are part of the project, at least the project management team here. We can answer all of those questions for you. But really this project is one that kind of addresses need, right? Addresses opportunity, and there's a story of leadership here that we want to talk about. And so very briefly, to start with the leadership side, Hancock Health, we've been working with Hancock Health for a while, and Hancock Health noticed this need and said, you know, nobody's really championing this idea. We knew that the K-12 superintendents were all gathering together to have conversations about what's next for career training, CTE programs in Hancock County specifically. As we talked to multiple developers who were interested in some of the property that Hancock Health had, they kept asking about workforce development and where's your training center and how does Hancock County plan to address the workforce shortage that's looming in the area. And by the way, is there any higher ed capacity in the county? And over and over and over, the answer was no, not really, we don't know. So Rob Matt and Steve Long from Hancock Health stepped up and said, hey, we think we can help at least get this ball rolling. So let us kind of walk through this and hire our team. Veritas is a third-party consultant that works with governments all across the state of Indiana, mainly helping units of government and even private entities at times kind of think through larger projects and bigger projects. And we've just completed a project very similar to the one we're going to talk about this morning out in Hendricks County called Made at Plainfield in Hendricks County. And so they asked us to come alongside and work with them to kind of help develop this. And I think what you're going to see today, I hope what you're going to see is that development of this idea, this concept. And so as we kind of dug into it, like I said before, we've got a project that's one of opportunity and one of need. Clearly the need we just talked about, the leadership we just talked about, and the opportunity, we think this is maybe the one project, if you've been around Hancock County long, which all of you have been for the most part, is one project that the whole county can get behind. Right? There's not going to be a lot of politics going on. And actually right now what we're seeing between the politics side is who's taking credit for it, not who's going to try and shut it down, which is really good and kind of fun place to be. So our company is really about people and process. We kind of push that out, that philosophy, to all of our partnerships that we work with. And so we want to know all of the people that are going to be involved. Many of you in this room have been an integral part of that conversation, that discussion, as we've pushed this project forward and continue to push the project forward because we think we've got some momentum. Process is what we bring to the table. Our firm is very skilled, and we have great people like Elena, who's one of them, who help our clients walk through systematically how to take an idea from concept all the way to delivery of a project. And so I'm not going to go through this, but up here on the screen is kind of our process that we walk through, right? We're taking all our people from this concept through design, through delivery, and that's what we're doing today. So I hope you can see this. Little bright, but I think, can everybody see that in the back? Is that okay? Okay. So really, we approach our projects in 3 to 5 phases, and this one we're using the 3-phase approach, really, which is our kind of programming, initial programming. We got our secondary programming phase, which gets a little bit deeper and a little bit harder to do, and then we get our construction side. Up across the top here, you can see our partners. We've got the private side of Hancock Health and 9-Star. Public, we've got county council, county commissioners. There are people who aren't here. I see Commissioner Spalding is here today, but Kent Fisk and Bill Bolander are both on our steering committee as well. They've kind of dug into this. Community, we've got Work One and the Hancock County Community Foundation. Of course, the 4 K-12 school districts, as I mentioned before. Higher ed partners, Ivy Tech, FinCins, which we couldn't bring them all up here and parade everybody around. But Ivy Tech, FinCins, Purdue Polytechnic, we've talked to Indiana Wesleyan, Indiana State, they all want to be here as well. And then we've got lots of interested business partners, some of which we can't even tell you who they are exactly yet. They've asked for some anonymity there. But there are people who are interested in being a part of this project because of the access to labor and the access to training and the facility. Then of course, Elena's, one of her roles is looking at all of the different funds that come through this, or the ideas that are there. So We're looking at RISE. I know she's got a proposal due this week for the RISE for the USDA grant. We just received a $2,500 grant from MIBOR to help market this project a little bit more. So we're constantly pursuing, we're meeting with Eli Lilly Foundation here in a couple weeks to kind of go through what their possibility might be and some other things. And so we're trying to beat all the bushes, get all the different funding opportunities out. And we know that when we submitted this ready application that Dave Decker wrote originally, we didn't know all the details, right? And so the more we've been working, we haven't stopped working. We're gonna keep working. We've got thumbs up from the county to keep pushing forward, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But really, why are we doing this? Strengthening Hancock County's workforce ecosystem. So I don't need to read these for you, you guys can read these. But really, how do we take what is an underutilized market for workforce, build into it from all the opportunities that we have, present some brand new opportunities for the K-12 school districts, as well as those adult learners who may be looking for a second career or just additional education. And then pair that up with how do we meet with our industry partners and help them meet their workforce development needs. So what exactly is needed out there on the west side of the county, right, in the big box market? We've talked to Carvana, right, who's got needs for certified mechanics to go over the vehicles as they come in the building. We've got welders out there that Southwork Metals, right, is another opportunity that they're constantly looking for skilled labor. And how do we do that? Can we partner with the K-12 schools in order to present some kids with certifications coming out of high school so they can go directly into the workforce instead of having to try to go to a 4-year or even a 2-year degree as part of that process? So most of you know most of this stuff, but really trying to maximize the community impact all the way across the board. So whether it's a student as young as 1st or 2nd grade going to see what might be an opportunity for them, or an adult on the end of their career who just wants to take that next step in their career and get some education, maybe a certificate or a degree or something there. So our steering committee is made up of these people. I think most of these names will ring a bell to you if you're not sitting in the room already. But there's a lot of people involved. And so the way we've structured this is we have a steering committee that helps us make decisions, that kind of brings our working team, which is the 4 of us and 1 more, David from my office. The 5 of us are the working team. We go out and do the work. The steering committee helps guide and direct us, give us opinions, ideas, thoughts, direction. And then we have even a larger group called the stakeholder committee. The stakeholder committee, right now we have about 40 names on the list. Any given day we'll have 20 to 30 show up for a meeting. But that's going to keep growing as we get more and more people interested. But that includes the partners like Ivy Tech, more private industry. Last week or 2 weeks ago, we had Hitachi Estemo in here talking to us about their needs for their expansion. And I'm sure most of you have heard about their expansion, but they have a pretty large expansion that they're planning right now where they need significant amount of workers. And they're still contemplating, is it going to be in Hancock County or is it going to be in Tennessee? And they said, hey, if this project happens, we will keep it in Hancock County, right? That's what they're pushing for. So how do we get to where we're trying to go? Number 1, obviously we've got about a 3-year plan here. Our goal is to be open and functioning by fall of 2024. Right? We've started to get some nods from the political seats on our steering committee of the county's willingness to begin to fund certain things. The county's already given $100,000 to seed the project to keep it moving, and I'll show you how we're going to spend that here in a second. But really in 2022, we're focused on identifying all those stakeholders, really getting the funding sources involved. We're doing some preliminary design and programming, which we're started just now. And then we're going to move to this memorandum of understanding or letter of intent with a lot of the partners that'll be involved. So Ivy Tech, Vincennes, those parties are already very familiar with what we do with the MOUs and LOIs because we just went through this with them in Hendricks County literally less than 2 years ago. 2023, so we're going to start working through final design at the end of 22 and into 23. Then we'll start bidding in 2023, hopefully construction right then as well. During that construction period, the other piece that we'll do is finalize all the higher ed contracts as part of it. They want to know when they can get in a building. There's no point in us opening a facility prior to them being able to use it and utilize it. So that fall of 2024 is ideal for K-12 to start their processes. It's brand new that school year. So there's a lot of work over the next 2 summers to really get this facility ready and up and running for everybody. Then we're looking at owner and tenant occupancy, probably like that June, July of 2024, so we can be ready for school start in end of July, early August in 2024. So that is the project schedule. The one piece I would like to point out here is you'll see this solid blue line all the way across the top, which says, if you can't see it in the black, it says public involvement and stakeholder outreach. Part of our team's process throughout the whole time is really engaging the public and the community over and over and over again. It's not just a one time, it's not they meet here and then they meet here and then they meet here. It's every step of the way we're seeking that approval and guidance and direction. The steering committee still gets to hear all that and they make the decisions pushing it down, but the stakeholder group just continues to grow and grow and grow. When we did the Made at Plainfield project a couple of years ago, we ended up with about 45 or 50 people in our stakeholder team. And yes, it can be hard to have a meeting like that, but yet everybody's speaking into that. And I think all those meetings really helped us identify exactly what that project is today. And that 100,000 square foot building is open today. It opened at the end of last July. It's full, and now we're planning an expansion just of the classroom space. We're looking at another 20,000 feet today. And then on top of that, the town has come to us and said we want to push in this facility called the Center for Applied Technology. And the Center for Applied Technology is going to probably be another 40 or 50,000 square foot building attached to this, which is just going to be about applied technology and how do we get manufacturers and technology. And we see the same thing happening in Hancock County with a lot of the industry here. So real quick, we've got a couple more slides and we'll be done here. But phase 1, 2, and 3, like I said before, kind of what you see in the blue side is a lot of planning, a lot of preparation. Phase 2, and we're in the middle right there in the end of phase 1. Phase 2 is we start to get real. We start to put money into consultants and surveys and geotechs and land identification and finish that design out. And then we start going into phase 3 of construction. And I'm not going to read through all this, but you can see there's multiple stakeholder engagement along the way. There's multiple periods of due diligence that we've planned out. And this is very similar to the process, not just what we did at MADE, but what we learned from MADE at Plainfield and how we make it better along the way. And then, so really, how do we propel this project forward, and how would these funds from READY really help our team push this thing and keep the foot on the gas, so to speak? So as I said before, the county's already given us $100,000, not us, but given the team $100,000 to kind of seed this thing. Out of that, we just are signing a contract this week for right about $50,000 in architectural scoping to start learning how big the building needs to be. And when I say building, it could be an existing building. We're still looking at those options, but it could be a brand new build too. We're just trying to understand size and how it works and fits together. We've identified $12,500 as marketing grant and branding grant, branding and budget, and then there's the $2,500 grant from my board to help support that. And then we've got several other services that are kind of building in there, so that we know there's going to be some land act services and maybe some legal services as we kind of collect around that $100,000. What's next though? So prior to the final understanding of exactly how this thing's going to be funded through the county, and the county just in the last month has stepped up and said, we think we can really do this. We may not want to own it at the end, but we think through the TIF and the things that are rolling off in the future that we're going to have capacity to build this project with you or with the team. The next milestones really are identifying that parcel. Where should the project go? And that could be looking at existing buildings or greenfield sites or whatever, redevelopment sites. We know we're going to need some survey, geotechnical and environmental. We know there's going to be some pretty significant legal and financial work with attorneys and financial advisors to start working through all the details with the county's finances and with all the different partners that are involved. Then of course, continuing that design and pushing that forward, continuing on with some real professional project management, and then of course the marketing push is going to be bigger than what we did at MADE, because in MADE, it was all done by the cities and towns and the schools. In this case, it's going to be a little bit different. We kind of got more bodies involved. And so lastly, really where we're at here is, I think our original request was $8 million when we thought maybe the $50 million was the number. When we saw that, that got shrunk down, right? $40 million is the number, sorry. We shrunk that down and kind of comparatively to that $2 million mark, and identifying what this really could be and what this would help us do if this money were to become true for us. Number one, we could look at land acquisition, identifying that parcel. This would not buy the property necessarily. We wouldn't want to do that. We could lock it up with options, give the team time to walk through the different scenarios that are there, and before we close and before we identify that final funding. Again, that survey, geotech, that due diligence level, we can continue the design, and really this fee right here of about 1.8 on the design gets us all the way through the end of design. So the design would be complete. We're estimating about a $1.6 to $1.8 million fee on the architecture. Again, an all-in project cost of $45 to $50 million. The longer we wait on this thing, as you guys can only imagine with the supply chain and labor shortages and all the things we're seeing, construction pricing continues to increase over and over and over again. Legal side, we think it's going to be around $100,000 to get us from here to the end of all the different agreements that are in place. course, we've got other construction and consulting costs that we're just kind of holding a place marker for, and then even some project management, which is not just us, it's all the different consultants that are involved in the project management side. So I went through this very quickly, maybe a little bit over my 10 minutes, I'm not sure, but would like to engage with you guys in some questions and just dialogue about the conversation. And please feel free to direct any questions directly to Rob or to David or to Elena or myself. So thank you guys very much for having us this morning.
Questions for Tim?
So the request of 2.2 to 2.8 million, that would get us, or get the group through the entire design phase, maybe locking up the land, but not actual construction.
Correct.
Are there ideas, so then are you assuming that TIF and some of those other sources you identified would be used for the actual construction phase?
Yes, so in our last steering committee meeting, some of the county officials stepped up and said, hey, we think we have found a way through our larger county TIFs to potentially fund, not necessarily all of the project. One of the conversations we've been having is whether this is done under a public-private partnership, whether we bring in a developer that has part of it, or maybe it's just a nonprofit that ends up owning the building at the end of the day, that everybody pays into and everybody has a seat on the board that manages it, kind of like the Made at Plainfield model. So yeah, there's options there, but the good news is we're continuing to seek grant opportunities across the state. But again, I think the political side of this as well, they've said, hey, I should say, one of the things that Mr. Fisk said, who's not only a council member, but also on the redevelopment commission for the county, one of the complaints that they get across the state is that, or across the county, is that we're TIFing all these properties and the schools are losing out on money, and so we don't have public safety here, and we're just, the old arguments of TIF, right? We all have heard the arguments of TIF. So I think that the council and the redevelopment commission have said, man, this is one way that we could actually use TIF money to go back to the K-12 and say, here, we know that we've been taking these funds for a long time and using them as economic development, but how do we then reinvest in our community? And this is actually good for everybody in the county. It's good for ages from kindergarten through 50 or 60 or 70, whoever wants to go back and get education. And the piece of this that we didn't really talk about too, I think there's a community aspect piece of this project where we're talking about having space like this, but larger, right? Where we can actually gather for banquets and different things that'll be managed by the building itself. But having it somewhere centrally located along that I-70 spine where everybody can have quick access to it seems to make sense, someplace on there. So we haven't identified land yet, but yes, we have identified other funding sources to get us from that point on. It's a lot easier to go identify and secure funding from the foundations, from the political side of this, if we actually know what it is we're trying to get to. And so having that design done would be very beneficial to be able to go out and do fundraising.
What was that number again?
What's that?
2.2 to 2.8.
So you mentioned Ivy Tech. Does Ivy Tech, have they defined maybe what their role would be, or are they just kind of involved in conversations right now?
So yes and yes. Okay. So Dr. Johnson, I don't know if you've met Dr. Johnson yet, but she is in charge, I think, of the Anderson market as well as the Hancock County market. She's been to several of our meetings and has spoken up multiple times saying that they would love a presence in Hancock County. They want to be a tenant and a partner in the project, similar to what they did at the Hendricks County model or the Made at Plainfield model. They took a lot more space and Made at Plainfield because they already had an established presence in Avon. So this side, they'd probably start a little bit smaller is what she's told us. But even Sue Ellsperman, who was at our Made at Plainfield opening, came up and told us specifically, hey, when you do this anywhere else around Indianapolis, we want to be involved, right? So they're seeing, and even Lorenzo from the Indianapolis market is saying, hey, we want to be involved because this is our population, this is our group. Vincent, same way.
And this would really give them a presence in Hancock County they don't currently have.
Correct, yes.
Now, you were involved in Made in Plainfield, David, I know Hub and Spoke, right? Both of those, am I correct, have components with K through 12 in them, like partnerships?
You want to talk a little bit more about your?
Yeah, so our partnership is with Campbell Southeastern School District. So just a little background on them. There's 23,000 students, so it's a really large school district. It's the largest employer in Hamilton County as well. And so our partnership was with them and the city of Fishers, and it kicked off this last fall for 5th graders. So every single 5th grader that goes to that district, there's about 1,600 of them, come through our facility, and they come for 2 days at a time, twice a year. So every day, school bus pulls up, kids get off, they come into this maker playground, which is a playground in tool tech and arts. It's got 3D printers, laser cutters, woodworking, using some of that equipment, but it's all there in one space, with computers, and some robotics are mixed in, and so they come in and they break into different pods. So there's 4 different pods. They get to choose 2 of the 4. One is it's a do-bot, so it's a little robotic machine that they actually have to code to pick up blocks and place and a strategic map. There's another one where they can actually put a pencil or pen in that robot and make it write a name. Another pod is printing fidget rings on a 3D printer. So they come in, they have to design it, they print it. And I mean, it really kind of blows you away, the stuff these kids are doing in 5th grade. The other one is a birdhouse for a specific bird that I cannot recall. But they come in, they cut the wood, they lay it out, they hammer it. They're working together with volunteers to do that. And then the last one is they build wireless LED locker lights that they can use at school. So it's really neat and interesting to see their excitement when they come in, and then to hear about them in the community when they go home to mom and dad at the dinner table and talk about how great of a time they had. So it's really about, you know, creating that exploration and awareness of what's out there as a potential career down the road.
Thank you, David. The Made at Plainfield model is a little bit different and actually moved a little bit faster than the K-12 team could keep up with and plan. They are our seat at the table. They're on our board. So actually, Judd Wolf was the guy on the board who just announced his retirement, so he's retiring. But Scott Olinger is the superintendent out there at schools. The Made at Plainfield building is right across the street from the high school, and it is intended that the kids can walk across the street to get dual credits and take classes and do different things. That hasn't happened yet. They're working on that program. They're hoping to roll it out this next fall. And with that, they said once they get that done, the superintendent, Mr. Olinger, said that once he gets that part done with the high school students, then they'll start to work on other opportunities down the line. What Made at Plainfield has turned into a little bit more than other things really is this kind of workforce development education center. So Amazon sends their employees from all over the country to that location to get trained on those robots that they have in place.
And I should add, we're building out 7th and 8th grade. We're working with the schools on that too. It's just it's a long-term play on that.
But our project is very specific. I mean, the K-12 component is very important to us. It's very important to Dr. Olin and Dr. Parker and Dr. Philhauer, Dr. Lantrip. We're meeting with them pretty consistently, trying to understand their needs to really build into how do we help mainly their CTE program, but I think there's gonna be other opportunities that kind of spiral out of this conversation.
How realistic is the 2024 date?
We think it's realistic. We really do. So some people are trying to get us to open by the fall of next year, which we told them was not possible. And then some people said, well, let's just push it to 2025. And I said, well, we haven't missed the fall of 2024 yet. So some of it will depend upon the supply chain and what happens with that over the course of the next 6 months. But if you think about that design, can you go back to that schedule? If you think about the schedule that we kind of laid out, as we've kind of addressed with our steering committee and everybody else, if we can get through design, so a full design on a building like this and programming is probably about an 8-month process. So if we start today, you're looking end of the year, January, February, to have those construction documents and bid documents. We're bidding there in the first, let's say March, April and then starting construction. Maybe we can even do packages depending on how it's done. We're about a 14-month construction schedule. So if we're starting in April, that puts us done in June of 24, July of 24. If we can get a certificate of occupancy or at least a temporary C of O earlier than that, like May, as kind of life safety, we can start moving furniture in, getting all the different things, the equipment that the high schools would need for their, kind of technical trained at HVAC, electrical, welding, all those different things. Clearly what we've seen and Made at Plainfield was Amazon wanted to bring in some very specific robotic arms to be training on. And so give them 2 or 3 months to build out that owner furnished equipment side to be able to ready to go. But we know that if we miss that date, we're talking about another year, right? Because coming in the middle of the semester or even in February or March doesn't really help anybody. Then we've got a building sitting there that really is not going to be utilized until August.
If the county commits county-backed TIF versus they don't, does that significantly impact that schedule?
I think it does, yes. I think it significantly impacts the schedule. I mean, so far we've been getting the positive nod. We actually went before the commissioners, we went before the county council, and we went before the redevelopment commission. Both the commissioners and the council unanimously passed resolutions in favor of pushing the project forward and contributing county resources to it. So we've got, clear unanimous votes there. In the redevelopment commission, we didn't ask for a resolution, it was just, but everybody was very excited about how do we start taking funds that we're spending on other things and move them towards something like this, because we know we have a looming problem of workforce development. We have a lot of jobs coming in a lot of different places across the county, and we don't have a great way to fill them, or even take our existing resident population and increase their education to make them more marketable in the workplace.
Made at Plainfield's a public model, you said this may end up private, has that been fully determined yet?
I think we're about a month away from determining that final model. We presented a couple model options to the steering committee at our last, month ago. And I think this next month, we're gonna try to make that decision moving forward and exactly what that is. We presented basically the MAID model, which is 100% paid for with county or town TIF in that case. And then we presented the kind of the hub and spoke model, which is more of a developer-driven model that then has some public incentive tied to it, or at least public leases and some different things that were associated with that. And I think the consensus of the group, and Rob, you can speak to this if you want, but the consensus of the group was really to push towards something more along the lines of having some of the stronger private entities back some of the debt that might be required that may not be covered by TIF or otherwise, but still kind of create this into a non-profit board center to where it's not necessarily publicly owned by some private industry, but it's publicly owned by the county. What we've heard from the county, they may not want to own it or operate it at least. So how do we do all that? So we're working through those final pieces right now. That's going to be really important for us to come to here. Doesn't mean we can't continue on with our design programming. The programming phase that we're entering into right now is for the architects to begin meeting with the Ivy Techs and the Vincennes and Dr. Olin and his counterparts and everybody else to really understand the space needs and how all that can get shared. As you can imagine, they might need stuff during the day, but maybe they have classrooms that aren't being utilized at night that Ivy Tech can utilize those classes at night. So we're not double building classroom spaces that just sit empty. So some of those, if you've been through the Made at Plainfield facility, there are classrooms that are just kind of white boxes. They're very clean, very simple, but anybody can walk in, set their stuff up. Ivy Tech can teach a class there one day, Vincennes is there the next day, Plainfield Schools can be there the next day, or even within the same day. So we want to get as much efficiency out of those systems as we possibly can throughout that process. Question in the back.
Yeah, two questions actually, both related to finance and operation side of things. If IEDC or Ernst & Young as their consulting program determined that the soft costs that you said you would be using the ready funds for are ineligible expenses, is there a way for you to shift it to an eligible expense?
Yes.
Good. Second question, if the total project cost exceeds $10 million, anything with ARPA in it will be subject to Davis-Bacon prevailing wage standards. Is that acceptable?
It would need to be.
I'm just laying it out
No,
there. Some people are walking away from federal funds because they don't want to trigger Davis-Bacon.
Yeah, so it comes into account on the cost of the project, right? We have to look at all that. But I think that no matter what we're doing, we're going to want this to be as transparent and as public and as open and honest as we can. That's been the direction from our partners, it's been the direction from the county officials. So we're not afraid of Davis-Bacon. Our company has gone through it multiple times with clients. It does add a little bit layer of complexity to different things that we have to do for federal monies. But again, not afraid of it. And
okay, just wanted to
that's
make
part
sure
of it,
that
yeah.
if we said that those are the parameters that your award would have to be made under, that you didn't say, oh, we're gone.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Appreciate it.
as the fiscal agent, that's our question to ask.
Gotcha.
Do any of the models you're proposing generate increment back to TIF?
So yeah, I didn't bring the models today to show you, but some of them, it's not a lot, right? It's not gonna produce a lot of money. The idea is that if we can get the facility paid for, and then with the grant monies and the other pieces and parts that go through it, the ongoing operating expenses are able to be paid for by the leases of the parties that are involved. So the Ivy Techs, the Vincennes, the Purdue Polytechnics, et cetera. And the models that we've run so far are showing that there should be at least a little bit of additional money that can go back to the county or go back to a TIF or pay off principal. It's never going to be enough to pay the whole thing off, but is there a return on investment of this? And the answer is financially, yes, a little bit, but community-wise, much larger.
I was just wondering, the Western County TIFs seem to have a lot of public things falling into it that don't generate increment, not so far a whole lot of increment generating things.
Sure.
Who's your market? I mean, number one, this is really impressive. This could be a great asset for Hancock County. Who are the different markets that it will serve? I mean, you've addressed that a little bit,
Do you
but
wanna talk about
as you
that?
try to get workforce in there
Yeah.
and really develop employees for the employers.
Yeah, absolutely. And so those are some of the conversations we're having now with the private industry. It is imperative for them to not only retrain their current workforce, but also partner with their and strengthen their incoming pipeline of workforce. So as we're looking at the different audiences that this will serve and the end users, it's going to be regional. This is a labor shed kind of analysis of all of those ecosystems in the county already. So, as we're working with potentially Hitachi and Hancock Health and 9 Star and the other private industries, where are they getting their workforce and pulling those in? And then also from the K-12 element, it's helping understand what their students are wanting service-wise, and we have a survey out right now that we're hopefully gonna get some data back from that, and what those certifications and dual credit classes and CTE components are, and how maybe Greenfield Central Schools can partner with New Pal or Mount Vernon to provide additional access and opportunities for those students. And then there's that adult retraining side that maybe they're unemployed or underemployed, or there's been a gap in their workforce. We've also talked to the sheriff as he's wanting some retraining for that second chance program, and how that all plays nicely together with those end users.
Great, thank you.
Maybe just one comment,
Please.
maybe to Ben's question. We have two, it may not happen this way, but we have two interested entities that would like to rent or lease space permanently in this building, if the building comes to fruition, et cetera, et cetera. But that helps with the operating costs going forward if we're extracting.
All right. And I'm pretty familiar with how you guys set up MAID and how things are kind of covered, the operating costs and stuff there, from visiting with Andrew out there and stuff. So
Good.
it seems pretty successful model that way.
We are at our 30-minute point. Any final question before we wrap up here? Okay.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you all.